Good afternoon to all of you, friends, ladies and gentlemen, especially our foreign delegates. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat, as we say in our dialect. I would like to present a topic on the cause of human conflict, which is the title of our third session. And here, we will specially explain what Father Moon is actually speaking about when he talks about the origins of conflict. And perhaps you have heard about or read about this before, but it is such an important understanding and wisdom that have actually revolutionized our understanding of our world's problem. We all want to see the end of conflict. We all want peace. But always the question is how? How do we realize that goal? One of the most important ways to do that is to actually understand its origins, its causes, its roots. And one of the things that UPF has emphasized in understanding conflict, that it actually starts from the individual. Before any conflict there is outside the individual, whether it be in the family or the worldwide level, there was a conflict inside in every single person. Even the Bible speaks about this. What I do is not the good I want to do, according to the book of Romans. The evil I do not want to do, this I keep on doing. Everybody with all the best intention could not say they have not done anything wrong. No matter how much we try to avoid evil, none of us is exempted. We have done, said, or perhaps thought about something evil. So this is the contradiction in man that, according to UPF, is where we should begin to look at the conflict. The conflict within the self. Therefore, we have two kinds of minds that drives us in two different directions. The good and the evil. That's why we said we are contradictory in nature. We know where goodness comes from, especially as religious people. We believe that goodness came from God. But where did evil come from? That would be a very, very important question. And if it's really addressed and answered properly, we can begin to address the conflict, the issues of conflict. So where did evil come from? Is it original? Some people have given up, thinking that it is perhaps original. But then if we think that it's part of our original being, then there's no more solution. And that we are born with evil nature, and that no matter what we do, we could never change what is original and natural. The second one is acquired. And this is what we will discuss about, and this is the good news. According to UPF, it is not an original thing. It is acquired. According to medicine, the correct understanding of the problem, especially the origin of the problem, can lead to the right remedy. It is like a dripping roof. I always use that example. If the floor is wet, that is not your problem, but it is your leaking roof. If you think that your problem is the leaking roof, then you would have solved it, and there will be no more wet floors in the next times that it will rain. But if you think that the problem is the wet floor, you're only looking at the symptom, and it will still be wet the next time it rains. So that's why this is what Father Moon is saying. The conflict within the individual leads to the conflict in the world. So it also goes that before we can solve all the conflicts of the world, where do we have to start solving the conflict first? It is in the self, in the individual. History is witness to so many conflicts. We have a history of war and fighting, and so many people have died, not only in the past, but even in recent time. And even if we all want peace and all speak about peace and why we gather here for peace, the threat of wars and conflict is still hanging over our heads. According to experts, if there will ever be another nuclear war, this will be perhaps the last war that will end all humanity. For the bombs that they have discovered and they have developed are much more destructive than the ones that was used in the Second World War. So this is our session, to understand the cause of human conflict. And according to UPF, it is rooted in a spiritual dimension. So this is where we have to find the path to find peace. We must address the root, and the root is spiritual, internal. Many experts have forwarded their ideas of why there's conflict and also forwarded many solutions. But even though they can all be correct, but the fundamental root they were not able to identify, and that is within the self. As we have mentioned, it is the selfishness within the self. Father Moon describes selfishness as the absolute standard of evil. So all evil stems from being selfish. We have heard this in the morning in the first session that was discussed, that even good things can turn evil when the motivation became for the sake of the benefit of oneself. What does history say as origins of evil? Since that is very important. According to an American anthropologist, there is a specific cause why all of this happened. And different age and different cultures have forwarded ideas of where it came from. One of the oldest culture is the Greek civilization. And this is how they would describe the root cause of evil. The story of a woman who is single but about to get married, and she was given a box that was sealed, and she should not open this box until marriage, until after she is married. But the would-be husband, he left the woman alone with the box, and then her curiosity started to think about what's inside, and perhaps thinking that it would not be bad to check and close it back after checking. And that's exactly what she did. But when she opened the box that she should not have opened, out came the contents, and according to the Greeks, this is the evils of the world. So it's because of a woman who couldn't control her desire, she opened the box that she should not have opened before marriage. But it's not always the woman. In a very faraway place, in another culture, the African mythology talks about a man who was told by God to bring this fruit to him. But then seeing the fruit and smelling it, it was so nice, he thought perhaps tasting it would be harmless. But after he tasted it, he couldn't stop eating it. And so, that was the problem. He started eating it before he gave it to the one who asked him to give, before God could receive it from him. So he was placed in a hole in the ground, and that began his subterranean life. So for the African mythology, it is because of a man who could not control himself, and he put himself before God. For in the Filipino context, this is how we understand where evil came from. The story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, at the beginning of time. They were told not to eat a fruit from the tree called knowledge of good and evil. But long came a serpent and told them that they could eat, particularly Eve, the woman. In the beginning, Eve refused, but she still ate the fruit. And it didn't stop there. After eating the fruit, Eve tempted Adam to also eat the forbidden fruit. And when Adam ate the fruit, that completed the fall. And they were banished from the Garden of Eden according to the story that we read in the book of Genesis. So if that is the case, then it's a very simple problem. The problem of Adam and Eve is that they ate an apple. But the question is, can we end all evil if we stop eating apples? What if we destroy all apple trees? Or if we blame the snake, let's kill all the snakes in the world. Will that make the world good? I don't really think so. That's why this is the most revolutionary part of Father Moon's message or revelation from God. That this story is much deeper than we think. When they were told not to eat a fruit, it was not a literal apple. It was not called or referred to an apple in the Genesis account. In fact, Father Moon said that this is a symbol. Because how can that be a literal fruit if God is a God of love? Why would He put a very dangerous fruit there that would cause His children's death? Loving parents don't put their children in harm's way. They bring them out of harm's way. But this is opposite. God placed the tree that bears the forbidden and dangerous fruit at the center of the garden. Some will argue this is just a test, whether they will obey or not. But then if this is a test, again we would put God into question whether He's really loving because the punishment is so severe. We all know, and in all religion, speaks about a God that is loving and forgiving. But how come in a very simple case of disobedience, He could not forgive Adam and Eve? So this is really a mysterious fruit. Especially, the second is, it has affected the future generation. If this is just a fruit, then it would have only affected their lives and not their children and their grandchildren. But it is exactly what Christianity calls the original sin that we have inherited from our first parents, Adam and Eve. And the third is most compelling. Life is greater than any kind of fruit. In the mind of Adam and Eve, they were warned that if they eat, they will die. Therefore, if they don't eat, they will not die. So the most important question is whether they like to live or they like to die now. The choice is there. But what did they do is they ate the fruit. That means they committed suicide. So let me ask you, have you ever tasted an apple? I would say, you would all say yes. And is it sweet and nice? You would say yes. But my question would be, would you ever think of giving up your life for an apple? No. So this is not a literal fruit. And that begins our understanding about what Father Moon's movement is really all about. That the sin is not just a case of eating a forbidden fruit. It is much more serious than that. And before we talk about the fruit, let's talk about the being that tempted them. It is described as a snake or a serpent, but it can talk. Not only that it's talking, mimicking human language, but it knew about God's commandment. So how can that be a snake? And then some teacher of mine argued that this is just disguised as a snake. But that's the most difficult part of the story. How can a man who was told by God not to eat believe a serpent? God is the creator of man, and the serpent talked to them to disobey God, and they listened to the serpent. That is very difficult to accept and understand. So this is not just a snake. The Bible actually speaks about the snake as really an archangel whose name is Lucifer. And there are many references in the Bible where angels have actually committed sin or violated God's words. So they're not absolutely good. There were angels that were punished and they were sent to hell. And according to the book of Jude, it describes very clearly what was the crime of this angel. According to Jude, it was sexual immorality and perversion. It is right there, written in the Bible for the last 2,000 years. And yet it is only now that it's being explained again more clearly that the problem in the time of Adam and Eve was not just eating an apple or disobedience, but it is the misuse of love. And that is why, and now we can understand, Adam and Eve did not cover their mouth. If they ate a fruit, they should have been afraid or ashamed of their mouth when they met God. Because this is the part that bit and chewed and swallowed the fruit. Or maybe they could have hidden their hands behind their back because that is the part that actually picked the fruit from the tree. But what was Adam and Eve's action? They did not cover their mouth or hidden their hands behind their back. What they did was they covered their lower parts. And if I can quote Job 31:33, it says, I have concealed my sin as Adam did. So whatever Adam hid was the part that he felt ashamed about. And whatever that he was ashamed about, it was not his hands, it was not his mouth, it was his very private sexual organ. This is the message of UPF. This is how we look at how all the corruptions and the evils of the world started because of this problem. It is not just a simple eating of a fruit, but it is the misuse of love. Now we can explain the meaning of the fruit. The fruit is the part of the tree that contains the seeds. The seeds are the baby plants. That's why we say in Filipino, so is the fruit, so is the tree. People also have fruits, and that's the way they multiply. And the fruit is the sexual love. Sexual love is such a very important part of Father Moon's message. He calls the sexual organ the most sacred part of the human body. Man is a reflection of God. So is the woman. What makes a man and a woman, mainly is the sexual organ. So what truly represents God in our body is the sexual organ. And we will know that as we go through this lecture. So the problem of the world is not about eating a fruit or because of a snake or because of a tree. The problem of the world is love, as we can see in all the world's religion. They talk about love, they talk about sex, but it should be holy and pure. There's no such religion that allows people to become sexually immoral or impure. Also, another evidence would be how it has affected the lineage. It was God who created the universe, and yet Jesus said in the Bible that we are fathered by Satan, that all people belong or are descendants of Satan, and that our lineage needs to be purified. When one of the most educated men in Israel, his name is Nicodemus, asked Jesus, how can I enter the kingdom of heaven? Jesus very, very briefly answered, you have to be born again. Because there's something wrong with our birth. We come from the lineage of Adam and Eve. Third evidence is the degradation of sexual love. There is something very sacred, mysteriously sacred about sexual love, especially human sexuality. It is only God who can create man, human beings. But God gave the power to human being to procreate another human being. Through which part of his body? If God is so powerful to create life, God gave man the sexual organs to procreate life. That's why the meeting of the sexual organ is the symbol of God. That's why the sexual organs are sacred. The most sacred part of the human body. But then what happened is we see that it becomes so cheap and people sell it for a very cheap price. Prostitution is considered as the oldest profession in history. There's a degradation of sexual love. Not only that, family breakdown as a result as well. We talk about families in the last session. It starts with good marriage. And Father Moon said, a good couple is a man and a woman centered on God. Because man is half of God's nature, woman is the other half. Better half plus better half equals best one. So marriage is not just a contract or invented by the law. It is a divine design for God to fulfill the ideal of love. When Mother Moon went around the world speaking, she said, "We marry in order to resemble God." We don't just marry to have a spouse, to have a wife or a husband. We marry to resemble God. God exists as a being of dual characteristics, and then she said, husband and wife together are a reflection of God's original image and nature. But the sad state, as have already been said, more than half of all marriages around the world today end up in either divorce or separation. Philippines, we don't have divorce laws, and yet there's so many incidents of separations and couples breaking apart. So when people say they want to get married, they pledge to each other till death do they part, but actually the reality is so many of them actually are separated. In some countries, more than 70% or more than 80% is the statistics of their divorce and separation. So let us conclude. The origin of human evil is the premature and the illicit relationship of the first human ancestors. The problem is love. We don't know how to love. And the problem with sexual love, it creates a result, a lineage. And that is the main issue, what Father Moon is saying. There was a change of lineage. We were supposed to be like grandchildren of Adam and Eve, and we were supposed to be, as grandchildren of Adam and Eve, the lineage of God. But because of the sin, that the first marriage did not turn out the way God wanted, but it was invaded by false love, we in turn became part of a family that is not related to God. This is called original sin in Christianity. Even the cause of crimes have been found to be caused by the breakdown of the family, and the problem of the breakdown of the family is false love. All criminals, all prostitutes, all drug addict people came from dysfunctional families. Even in history, the decline of civilizations have been found to be related to sexual immorality. Even great men and women, great men fall or great women fall because of misuse of love. So it is when the family and the morality is strong that the nation can prosper and develop. But even though it's a very strong and powerful nation, if the family and morality becomes weakened and declining, it will also decline. And we can talk about many examples of this when we look at history. So the cause of human conflict is selfishness or self-centeredness. And most especially, according to the teachings of Father Moon, it is the misusing of love. Immorality and licentiousness in the personal lives of adults ultimately destroy the lives of their children. The reason today society doesn't have a level of happiness to match its level of material affluence is that families are being destroyed. To save families, adults must first live proper lives. Then it is possible to raise children in sexual purity. Father Moon is creating a new revolution. Nobody will die. No buildings will be destroyed. It will be quiet and bloodless, to transform people from their selfishness to become selfless. And in fact, it is the warning of all religion. This is from the Bhagavad Gita. Let me just quote this. When unrighteous disorder prevails, the women sin and are impure. This disorder carries down to hell the family and destroys righteousness of birth. All single religion. This is from Zoroastrianism. Adultery is the worst deed that man and tyrants commit. From the teachings of Buddha, the man who goes to the wife of another digs up the very roots of life. They might have differences in theology, but they all sound the same when they talk about love and human sexuality. Prostitution is the head of evil, not the hands or arms. It is the head, according to the famous Chinese proverb. From the tradition of the Muslims in the book of Quran, do not commit fornication. The penalty on the day of judgment will be doubled. And this is the only sin written in the entire book that receives double punishment in the day of judgment. This is how seriously religion has taken this. Religions inspired by God want people to live selfless lives, especially to keep their sexual lives pure. From the Sikh religion, the other grant, sexual relationship with another's wife is like eating poison. It will kill you. And then from the Old Testament, from the book of Exodus, the 10 commandments. The first one, of course, is no other God. The 7th commandment says, do not commit adultery. And the 10th commandment said, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife. Even in the New Testament, we read from the book of Corinthians that this is the only sin that you are committing inside yourself or in your body. All the other sin you do outside of your body, but sexual immorality is what you do to your own self. If you consider your body as holy, you are not making it holy by misusing love. Again, from the book of Matthew, you have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery, but I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Even it went on to say that if your eyes or your hands is what's making you fall away from God and you're going to hell, it is better for you to pluck out your eyes or to cut off your hands than to keep it and your whole body will be punished. So this is how seriously all religions have looked at this problem. And that is why this is one area where all religious people can unite. To create a condition, to create a foundation or a movement that can actually fight immorality together. Not to discuss and to debate upon our theology, but to take a common front against sexual immorality and therefore produce and fulfill the ideal of true love and the ideal of human sexuality. So in conclusion, the cause of human conflict is selfishness or self-centeredness, and its resolution is to be selfless or to learn to live for the sake of others. I hope you learned something from this presentation. Thank you very much.